Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. This show is heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And WBCQ is based out of Monticello, Maine, in beautiful Worcester County, and broadcast all over the world with millions of listeners. Well, maybe not a million, millions. But anyway, it's also heard on impnation.org on Saturday afternoons at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's brought to you by Camp Constitution, which, among other things, runs a week and a day-long family camp in Rindge, New Hampshire. Next year's camp, July 2nd to the 9th. And we have a very important resource for people, especially homeschoolers or private schoolers, the Sam Blumenfeld Archive. And we've been receiving hundreds of thousands of views in the last couple of months. We have the Alpha Phonics available with all 128 lessons in video and audio. So you can actually teach people how to read using our website free of charge. So my guests are already here. I've got Mitchell Shaw from Virginia and my brother from another mother, Reverend Stevie Craft. How are you guys doing?
Hey, man.
So, doing very well, Hal.
Yes, well, I was hoping to get you guys on last week, and I don't know, sometimes you got to give a heads up. I guess I didn't do that. So we discussed the Black Lives Matter, and Mitch Shaw, are you a contributing editor or just a contributor to the New American Magazine?
Regular contributor.
A regular contributor. You focus a lot on cyber issues, internet issues, internet security, but you have a couple of great articles in the September 19th, 2016 New American, and the hard copy. It's also, I'm sure are these articles online too, do you know?
They are, Hal, those and quite a few others. In fact, you're correct. I began my writing career with the idea that I would write about the intersection of technology and liberty, but I would guess that over the last 6 months, I've probably written twice as much on anything related to Black Lives Matter and the war on cops as I have on anything related to the intersection of technology and liberty. It's just floating right now. It's a big issue.
And Reverend Craft, of course, is known many years. You're more of a co-host than you are a guest. And we spent the last couple of weeks, we had a phenomenal trip to Maine dealing with the LePage issue and how the left promotes the race issue. It was interesting, too, in the front page story that about your press conference up there, supporting, not necessarily defending everything LePage, but supporting him overall. The article came out in the Kennebec Journal, and it continued on from the front page. And the article above that says, unarmed black man shot by police in California. So when you read that, you get the idea that, well, okay, he was shot because he was black and unarmed, and it must be what police do. They must have a course at their academy on how to shoot unarmed black people. That's the attitude you get. And, of course, we know that over the years, the police have been, in some cases, there have been some abuse, but that's going to happen. I think the statistic that you had some statistics in your article, Mitch. I think you mentioned there was something like over 4,000 blacks are shot by other blacks in over a year.
An average of, and this is quoting data from both the CDC and the available crime statistics available from the FBI. And this comes from a study done by University of Toledo criminologist Dr. Richard R. Johnson. And as Michelle Hickford wrote for Allen West website, on average, 4,472 black men were killed by other black men each year between January 1, 2009 and December 31, 2012. What's interesting, Hal, is during that same period, the number of black men on average, both justified and unjustified, who were killed by police officers is 112. So Black Lives Matter has taken to the streets, burning down cities, raping and pillaging their way across the country, over 112 deaths. Now, for the sake of this conversation, let's just say that all 112 of those are unjustified. They're not. The vast majority of those are justified shootings. If you point a gun at somebody, you can expect him, if he's a police officer, to at least try to shoot you.
That's right.
But let's just say that all 112 of those are unjustified. They're going to burn down their own cities, over 112 deaths, while they ignore 4,472 deaths each year at their own hands. There's a problem.
And by the way, that quote, that figure doesn't include, there's lots of black police officers. In fact, in Baltimore, was it last year when they had all these problems, the police chief is black, and I think it's close to 50, the force is about 50% black. That may have been an issue. It may have been an issue 50 or 60 years ago where there were very few black policemen, but that's no longer the issue today. Is that correct?
Well, it is correct, but of course the Black Lives Matter apologists, and that's red antagonists, would say that when a black man puts on the police uniform, he ceases to be black and becomes blue, and he's as much a part of the problem as the white officer wearing the same uniform. And that's almost a direct quote from a handful of them. It's like they're all reading from the same cards, because they are.
Yeah.
And you interviewed, or I don't know if you interviewed him, but you quoted a policeman from Atlanta who was a black, happens to be black, and he was quite outspoken. He got into law enforcement. You can discuss that, of course.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify, not from Atlanta. He lives in the Palm Beach area of Florida.
Oh, Florida, okay.
He was with Baltimore PD for a while, but hails originally from, I think, Brooklyn or somewhere in the New York City area. I can't remember off the top of my head which of the boroughs. He writes on Facebook under the name Jay Stallion or Staline. That is not his real name. He does not use his real name because he's smart enough to know that a black man writing about these issues would probably be well advised to hide as much of his identity as he can. You know, there's a relevant point to all of this. In a world as racially divided as ours right now, anybody who speaks up on this issue, unless they're just parroting the leftist dogma, is taking a real risk. Myself, as a prematurely graying, pear-shaped white man, just addressing this issue, I get labeled as a racist. Reverend Craft, as a black man, instantly becomes an Uncle Tom. There's no way to avoid that. And I illustrate this sometimes when I'm speaking with people in person. I'll lower my voice to them while I say that, and I say, now to prove that, imagine if right now I just sat up abruptly and said, why, that's the most racist thing I've ever heard. I'm not going to stand here and listen to this, and turned around and walked away. Your response doesn't matter. A room full of people just watched me call you a racist and walk away from whatever it was I say you said.
Right.
You can't defend yourself. There's no defense.
Right.
You're a racist from this moment forward.
It's almost as if there's no debate on the issue. We're going to label you. We're going to label you something, and the discussion ends. Reverend Craft, you were asked by one of the media people up in Maine about race relations in general, and you said, I think you said that it's been worse under Obama. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, I remember the conversation. How one of those liberal reporters asked me that question. And you're right. Now that I remember, now that I recall, I did say that without any type of compromise. Here's what's going on with this whole Black Lives Matter business. Black Lives Matter and these other leftist groups, New Black Panthers, Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street, Nation of Islam, what we're doing, we're seeing a revisitation of the 1960s on steroids. It has nothing to do with cop killings. It has nothing to do with cops killing blacks. It has nothing to do with any of that. What it is it's an issue of pushing leftist ideology. The issue is ideology. The issue is not Black Lives Matter or any such thing. There are major entities from not only from George Soros, but also major foundations, Ben and Jerry's Ice Cream, Kellogg, Ford Foundation. There's big money that's behind this stuff that's pushing communist ideology to destroy the United States of America. If you look back historically, Mitchell and Hal, if you look back historically, we saw what happened in the 60s. And that's the reason why we've gone to be cognizant of the fact that we're right back to where we were in the 60s. Let's go back to the 60s when Rodney King, who's dead now, when he started to act a fool, and the Los Angeles Police Department took him down, and as a result, the riots came out of that. Then shortly after that, we had O.J. Simpson, and again, the race card was played. We all knew O.J. Simpson killed his wife, Nicole, and killed her boyfriend. We know that. But what happened was, again, Mark Furman, the detective that was on that case, lied about the race issue when he said that he didn't use the N-word, and then they pulled up those old records to show that he used the N-word repeatedly, and then the Dream Team, Johnny Cochran, who's dead now, Dershowitz, and a few others got him
Definitely
off.
Bailey was involved, too.
Exactly. So here's the measure. You heard me tell those leftist reporters how a couple weeks ago when we were defending LePage. Here's the measure. The race card has long longevity. And the Reds, the communists, know, the Marxists know that they can always insert the race card and it'll always work. It'll always work. We have never solved the race issue from day one. And there is the dictatorship of the proletariat when Engels and Marx came up with long time ago, when they came up with this nonsense. They said
both of whom, by the way, were racists.
Right.
Karl Marx. It's interesting. One of these champions of the poor and downtrodden.
Right.
Che Guevara was a racist.
Right.
Karl Marx wrote a book, A World Without Jews, and he used to refer to people of Negroes, Jews with Negro blood, when he want to offend you.
You use chaos and crisis. We learn this in the JBS. You bring pressure from the top and you bring pressure from the bottom. It's called the pincher theories. You cause chaos and then you bring the system down. What we have to do is speak against this stuff. It has nothing to do with cop killings. It has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. I went a couple months ago, I think it was April, I went out to Purdue University to do a pro-life rally with some black pro-lifers. And the hostility and the evil that was presented to us because of the fact that we confronted those leftist students and those leftist professors, and we said, how can you say out of your mouth with a straight face that you believe this nonsense about Black Lives Matter while you're killing we're killing our unborn children, you're killing each other in the streets. You don't care anything about Black Lives Matter. But see, some of them are dupes. They don't realize that they're being used by the Marxists. Others of them are Marxists, and they know they're being used, but they don't care because they have given themselves over to Marxist ideology. So what we have to do is we have to start looking at the roots of this stuff. The roots of this stuff is ideology. They don't care anything about...
Right.
Yeah, it's about we're going to bring the United States of America down. We're going to bring it down using the race card. It works. It's always worked, and it'll continue to work until those of us that love God, those of us who work together, salt and pepper teams, white people and black people and Hispanic people that love God and going to stand against this mess and call it for what it is, see, and deal with it. And it may cost us our lives. Because this stuff's dead serious. It's dead serious. Some of us are going to die. That's just the way it is. The name calling, we can put up with that. But some of us are going to be martyred. And we have to. I had my birthday today. The kids took me out to.
Happy birthday! You're a very young 73, I think.
And amen. And I tell the people all the time. You heard me tell them that at that press conference. Look, I'm 73. I passed my 70. The thing they can do to me is kill me and send me to Jesus. But we have to prepare ourselves for that because these Marxists, they're not playing. They're dead serious about bringing America down. They are dead serious. And we have to be just as serious about standing against this mess and be willing, as Jesus says, if we want to try to save our life, we may lose it. But if we're willing to lose our life for the sake of the gospel, we'll find it. So we've got to come to that place where we're going to be dead serious to speak against this mess. They can call all the names. They can call racist and hunky and cracker and Uncle Tom and all. That doesn't prove, But we have to come to the place that we'll be willing, as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego says, we're not bowing. You can throw us in the free furnace. Our God is able to deliver us out of your hands, but even if he doesn't, we're not bowing.
Do your worst, right? You said. Mitch, what do you think is the end game? Well, I think we all know what the end game is, but what is behind the Black Lives Matter? What exactly are they trying to do?
Well, I think, there's an old adage, follow the money.
Yeah.
Follow the money.
Right.
So when we look at this and we realize that deep-pocketed leftists like George Soros, through his Open Society Foundations, I think he calls it, the Center for American Progress, pulled together $33 million through grants to a variety of subversive organizations under the BLM umbrella. And I think it's important to point that out. When we say Black Lives Matter, we're not talking about a single monolithic organization. Like when you say the John Birch Society, you're speaking monolithically.
Right.
When you speak of Black Lives Matter, it really is an ideology. It's sort of an umbrella of organizations.
Right.
And they've been the beneficiaries of $33 million from Soros and the Center for American Progress. But even with all of that, I think it was the Washington Times just reported that the Ford Foundation, and of course we all know that the Ford Foundation is a globalist bunch of people, and the Borealis Philanthropy Group, also very, very globalist-minded, recently formed a group called the Black-Led Movement Fund with a 6-year commitment to a pooled donor campaign for $100 million.
Wow.
Over the next 6 years.
Okay? Can you imagine what can be done with $100 million in going to actually help people, structure, refurbishing the inner city structure?
And that's a point that I've made over and over, that if this was about Black Lives Matter, if this was about making Black lives better, then why isn't Black Lives Matter taking that now $133 million that they've got to spend over the next 6 years? Why aren't they holding job fairs in these impoverished black communities so that somebody trying to come up out of that neighborhood can get better than a McJob and ask people if they want fries with that shake?
Exactly.
Or better than sweeping the parking lot at some dumpy gas station on the corner of Murder Boulevard and Bloodletting Street. But instead of holding those job fairs, what they're doing is they're using a chunk of that $133 million to demand higher minimum wages. Well, what's that all about? The higher minimum wage isn't going to do any good when the bottom line is that the education levels of blacks in the inner cities of America is abysmally low. It's nearly a miracle when one of these young men or young women graduates high school, much less goes on to complete 2, 4, 6 years of college. It happens, but it's not the norm. You know, when I was growing up, I spent a little bit of time just outside New Orleans, Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, I was fascinated by the culture there. We were new to that area. And as an aside, by the way, I don't think it matters how long you live in Louisiana. If you're not from there, you will never be one of them. It's just a cultural thing there. It's a neat place, though. So we went out, caught a bunch of crabs one day in traps. We brought them all home. My mom's going to get them ready for dinner. She puts them in a big pot in the middle of the table, and while she's getting everything ready, and I'm watching them in the stock pot, and they're getting a claw up over the edge of the pot. I said, Mama, they're going to climb out of there. She said, no, they won't. You just watch them.
Yeah.
I'm watching them. They're going to climb out of there. She said, no, they won't. You watch what happens. And I sat there and watched it. Every time one was ready to pull himself up, 3 or 4 more would scramble on his back and pull him back down in.
Right.
Wow.
Now, let me ask you, does that sound familiar?
Yes,
because
we know how how that works. That's why we know, Mitch, and how that it has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. It has nothing to do with that.
But to answer Hal's question, so what is sort of the end game? Again, keep following the money. Take, for instance, just one of these subversive organizations that's going to be the beneficiary of that $100 million from Ford and Borealis. The group is called the Movement for Black Lives. Now, you got to keep up with these acronyms because MBL is only part of BLM. And every time I go through all these acronyms, it's like, the homosexual lobby doesn't like to be called the homosexual lobby. They want to be called LGBTQ.
Right.
And
yeah.
I always feel like I'm ordering a sandwich in a deli.
Not a steak and tomato, yeah.
Except I don't want that sandwich. So, but this group, MBL, has put out on their website, and any of your listeners can Google the Movement for Black Lives and visit their website and read their demands. Now, they don't call this a manifesto, but it amounts to a manifesto. And here what they're demanding. Of course, say it with me, reparations. Now, I grew up I'm the offspring of poor sharecroppers. I don't have anything to make reparations for, folks, okay? Let me just get that out of the way up front. But these reparations would include free college and a minimum wage. That's the phrase they use, minimum wage, but then they define that to mean minimum living standard with no requirements for the one receiving the wage to perform any work in order to receive it. It's enough to make you wonder what they need free college for if they never plan to work. They're just going to live off their reparation. But moving on, they say that they want legalization. Of course, they prefer the term decriminalization of both drugs and prostitution.
Right.
So let's get back to, and to add the cherry on top of this, with a wink and a nod toward Marx and Engels, they're also demanding economic justice that would include, and this is a quote, collective ownership of businesses in black neighborhoods, not merely access. So collective ownership of the businesses. So, this is communist on its face, but the real issue here is, if you look at each of these things, none of what they're demanding would do a stinking thing to embetter black lives.
Exactly.
They would not better black lives. What they would do instead is they would make black lives dependent even more so than they are on the current welfare state, which is really at the root of probably everything that's wrong in black neighborhoods. Because here's what we're going to do. You don't have to work. You can go to college for free if you want to and get a very liberal education that will continue to feed your notion of victimhood. Okay, you get this free minimum wage so you don't have to work, and we're going to decriminalize drugs and prostitution. So, you're going to have more drug fiends on the street. You're going to have more young women being sold into prostitution at earlier ages. So rather than march in the streets and demand that black men in their neighborhoods marry the women with whom they intend to sire children, and therefore break the cycle of poverty and fatherlessness that is an epidemic in black inner city neighborhoods.
It's actually an epidemic in the whole. It's not just blacks, but it's also the whites.
But when we look at the numbers in black inner city neighborhoods, so let's just say across the nation,
80%. It's about 80. Is it 80%, Reverend Craft?
It's over 75%.
Yeah.
Over 75%. Now that's not just counting the inner cities. What they do in that is they lump. If you listed yourselves on the census form as being African American or of African descent, you get lumped into that whether you live in the suburbs or the inner city. So if it's 75% across the board, my goodness, what is it in the inner city? Nearly 100%. It's nearly 100% in the inner city. It's an anomaly for a young man or young woman growing up in the inner city with black skin to even know who their father is. There's something wrong here, and race has nothing to do with it.
Right.
This is the important point that they all go ballistic over is, and this actually came, I had an interesting conversation with my priest who said, it's almost impossible to talk about race in this racially divided culture. But what you can talk about, Mitch, is culture. And that got me thinking. So I went to the Cambridge English Dictionary and looked up the word culture. It defines culture as the way of life, especially the general customs and beliefs of a particular group of people at a particular time. I think that nails it down. So culture is about behavior. It's about customs. It's about beliefs. It's not about color. Whereas a person who comes from one culture, whether higher or lower, can say to themselves, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. They can switch cultures. We see this every day in America, okay? You can't switch races. You're born what you are, and that's what you're going to be. The good news is that's got nothing to do with who you are. It's just the color of your skin. Now, culture matters, and I'm not saying that all black culture is bad and all white culture is good, because then you've got to subdivide. What do you mean when you say white culture? There's a wide spectrum there, and there's a wide spectrum in black culture.
Right.
But what typically gets classified as black culture in America is, let's be frank, morally bankrupt, crime-ridden, the underclass. And very well put, Reverend. And so what we wind up with is some questions that Black Lives Matter doesn't want to answer. Like, if I really want to address the issue of what's wrong in my neighborhood, I can either take personal responsibility and ask hard questions like, why is crime, especially violent crime, exponentially higher in black neighborhoods? I can ask, going back to the illegitimacy rate, why is an intact family almost an anomaly in the inner city? I can ask a lot of these hard questions, but I wind up realizing that now I'm going to have some responsibility. So on the other hand, I can say, or it's the cop's fault. It's the white man's fault. If I can place the blame out there, away from me somewhere, I don't have any responsibility. Guess what wins hands down?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
See, that's the reason why we've got to unpack the thing for what it really is and realize it's orchestrated attempt across the country, and actually it's actually global, to destroy Western civilization by bringing in a Marxist system, and it's working. And that's what we have to deal with. That's what we have to hit, because even now, this is somewhat of an aside, but then again, it's not. And we talk about the insiders all the time and the globalists.
Yes.
You see what happened just today in our major newspaper here in New Jersey, which is the Star-Ledger. The Sunday Star-Ledger has the largest circulation. Guess who's on the front cover? Trump and that nonsense of something that he said about women 11 years ago. They held that in the kitty until they figured it, and then we're going to shoot this video out. And now all of the so-called establishment elitists in the Republican Party is now jumping ship. All of a sudden now, we can't back him. We got.
Well, they never liked him to begin with.
Of course.
It's not like they jumping ship. They didn't want him there to begin with. So
exactly. So now he had better stand firm, because now everybody in the so-called established GOP, they're all now ready to jump ship. I want to see what the so-called preachers are going to do, who all of a sudden prayed for him, wanted to stand with him. Now all of a sudden, something that he did and said 11 years ago now, not last night,
right.
11 years ago. Now all of a sudden, they're acting like they don't know what to make of it, and they're so put out and so embarrassed that now they can't support him. And now they're gonna jump ship, and they're talking about, who we gonna get now at the 11th hour to replace him? You know, so he better stand, just like we told LePage a couple weeks ago. Man, you better stand, and take the hit and stand firm and not be moved, whether they support you or not. Because when I saw the paper this morning, I said, I see exactly how this thing's going to go. See, that's the reason why we got to get beyond this so-called conservative liberal nonsense of left versus right. Because, see, they're all playing the same game. All of a sudden now, the established GOP, all of a sudden now, from headquarters all the way down, all of a sudden now, they can't support him. Like they did, Clinton was in office, Bill Clinton, and he was messing with women while he was the president. But that's all right. Trump did something
and
Hillary
Hillary, she drops the F-bomb. The minute the cameras are off, she's one of the most vulgar ladies. Hey, guys, we have about less than a minute left, so I just want to thank you both for coming on. And, Mitch, do you have any I guess, newamerican.com is where you can find your articles.
And the newamerican.com, and I write as C. Mitchell Shaw. So if anybody wants to see, they would just find any article I've written and click my name, and they can see everything. But we've got a lot of great writers for the New American. And
absolutely.
I would welcome all of your readers, Alex Newman, Bill Jasper. I don't want to keep naming names because I'll leave somebody out. They're all great. I work with a great bunch of guys and gals, and if your readers want to see what the news is behind the news, the newamerican.com is probably the best place they're going to find that.
All right, Rev, thank you. We'll be seeing you in a few weeks. We're going to be having a very fascinating tour in Maine called The Drug Card and the Race Card, A Deadly Hand, and we'll talk more about that, I guess, next week. Or you can just visit our website, campconstitution.net, or our Facebook page where I've actually created events for these things. So thank you, guys. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Camp Constitution Radio, WBCQ The Planet. Good night, and God bless.
God bless. All right. Good talking to you, Mitch.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.